She said it was just an innocent girls' trip. I smiled, kissed her on the cheek, and whispered, "Enjoy the island. With Kevin." 30 seconds later, her world collapsed. My phone started lighting up. Call after call, message after message. She was supposed to be in Miami, sipping cocktails on the beach. Instead, she was at the airport, begging for the next flight home. 23 years of marriage, gone in one text message. You know that moment when the woman you trusted most becomes a stranger? When the silence in your own house feels louder than any fight could ever be? That's where my story begins. Stay with me. Because what happens next isn't revenge. It's justice. Hit subscribe if you've ever been betrayed and want to see what calm, calculated payback really looks like. And this is where the quiet truth first showed its face. My bright kitchen in Naperville. Morning sun through the blinds. The smell of fresh coffee. Laura's shower running upstairs. I grabbed my favorite mug, the one with the tiny chip on the rim, and set it by the sink. Then her phone buzzed on the counter. One buzz, then another. I wasn't snooping. I was half awake, thinking about payroll deadlines and whether the lawn needed mowing before the weekend. The screen lit up and handed me a sentence I'll never forget. "Can't wait for our Miami getaway. Just you, me, and the beach. Kevin. Yoga studio." The letters felt louder than the house. My hand didn't shake. It just stopped moving. The mug felt heavier than ceramic should ever feel. Somewhere upstairs, the water kept running, like nothing in the world had changed. But downstairs, in a kitchen that always felt safe, I understood that innocent was about to mean don't look too close. Silence isn't weakness, it's a tool. Instead of storming upstairs, I rinsed the mug, wiped the counter, and circled the date on the family calendar, Laura's girls' trip. That afternoon, I scrolled our shared calendar, then wrote 3 words on a sticky note in my office. Yoga, Miami. I started watching with the patience I saved for tax season. Book club that always ran late, sudden overtime that never showed up on paychecks, the new habit of showering the second she got home. Her scarf smelled like a cologne I didn't own. I didn't argue with the story she'd practiced. I didn't feed a performance built on denial. I let small facts pile up like neat receipts, dates, places, times. It felt strange, being gentle with the truth while it was anything but gentle with me. But I learned a long time ago, shouting makes noise, details make sense. If I was going to lose my marriage, I'd keep my dignity. When the heart trembles, let the numbers drive. I pulled our bank statements on a quiet Sunday night. 2 hotel charges I didn't recognize, same brand, different weekends, both on nights she said class ran late. No conference emails in her inbox, nothing on her studio calendar. The SUV mileage didn't match the story either. The gas receipts wrote a cleaner version. Northside hotels, late checkouts, routes that never passed the studio. Overtime without overtime pay is not a job. It's cover. And then there was the pre-authorization that settled everything for me. Miami, the day before the girls' trip, on a card we both used. It wasn't complex, just consistent. Each line agreed with the next one, like a graph smoothing into a single direction. I didn't need a confrontation to believe my own eyes. Truth has a tone, and it's calm. It sounded like printer paper, like a spreadsheet that finally balances, like a door clicking shut behind a lie. Control isn't about yelling, it's about a checklist. I called Curtis, old friend, steady lawyer, the kind of calm you borrow when yours runs out. We set a meeting at Harper & Associates for Tuesday after work. I spent that night photographing passports, titles, the mortgage packet, retirement summaries, every page that decides a future. Over coffee that tasted like closure, we talked options without drama. "Protect the house," he said. "Consider a temporary freeze on joint accounts, quietly. No threats, no scenes, no grand speeches, just steps and dates, the way coaches draw routes on a whiteboard. File here, review there, confirm this, lock that." I didn't pretend I wasn't hurting, but I let the plan carry what my chest couldn't. Safety isn't a feeling, it's a series of done things. I walked out of Curtis's office with a folder and a timeline, and for the first time in days, my breathing matched my pace. The clock had finally started working for me. If she wanted the lie to breathe, I'd give it air and a clock. I built a simple, dated timeline: text screenshots, card charges, Uber pickups against class schedules. I kept a quiet journal in my phone: times, smells, routes, details that sound petty until they're proof. I backed it all up to the cloud, then backed up the backup, because truth is only as strong as the copy you can pull when a story changes. I said yes to the trip, nodded at the packing list, and asked about sunscreen like a husband who still believes. I didn't bait her, I just stopped protecting the illusion. Every lie needs room to grow before it collapses under its own weight. 3 weeks would be enough, for her to get comfortable, for me to get ready. When she laughed about ocean views and yoga on the sand, I smiled back and checked the calendar. I wasn't waiting to explode. I was waiting to finish the math. I just decided to finish the math, so that night I went where I always go to think: the old recliner in our living room. The cushion leans a little to the left, the way my dad's chair did when I was a kid. The house was still, TV off, fridge humming. Out back, the maple shed orange leaves onto the patio stones like a slow snowfall. That room used to feel safe. Birthday candles, football Sundays, Christmas mornings stacked in the corners like invisible boxes. Now it felt thinner. Not dangerous, just unguarded. Like the locks worked, but the trust didn't. I stared at our family photos on the wall and wondered when a smile becomes a cover story. I listened to the vents sigh and the wind tease the fence and told myself the truth men don't like to say out loud. Safety isn't a place, it's a promise. And once a promise breaks, the house doesn't change, but home does. The changes were small and ordinary, the way lies always try to be. Book club ran late. She texted at 9:12, then 9:38. When she walked in, she kept her voice light, told me about a chapter she loved, but the details slipped. Wrong character name, wrong city, and there was the smell, clean, sharp, not my deodorant, not my aftershave. I hung up her scarf and felt myself step out of the conversation like a referee watches from the sideline. She rinsed a wine glass that never saw wine and said she was tired. I said I'd already eaten. We didn't fight. We didn't even raise our voices. Older guys will understand this. Sometimes you don't need a confession. You need a pattern. I asked if book club was good. She said it was fine, the kind of safe word people use when they've run out of honest ones. I nodded, turned off the kitchen light, and let the hallway swallow our footsteps. Once you admit you're mapping a lie, the lines practically draw themselves. I opened our family calendar and compared it with her studio's class schedule online. The sub-shifts she mentioned didn't match the posts about substitute instructors. I checked Uber receipts against the nights she said she was working late. Pickups 2 neighborhoods over, drop-offs near hotels, not the studio lot. Gas purchases told the rest of the route like breadcrumbs. North Side Friday, West End Sunday. Never the same pump twice. Even her habits had drifted. Longer showers, locked phone, a new "don't wait up" that used to be "text me when you're close." I didn't chase her story. I charted it. It's amazing how calm the truth sounds when it fits across a week, then a month. The map didn't accuse her. It just removed my excuses. By the time I closed my laptop, the couch, the hall, even the lamplight felt like they'd moved a half-inch away from us. When she finally called it a girls' trip, it landed like I knew it would. Soft, practiced, careful with my feelings. I asked where they were staying. She said she didn't remember the hotel, just that it had great ocean views. I smiled and said that sounded nice. I walked to the calendar and marked the departure day with a small dot only I would notice. Then I washed the dinner plates and let the water run too long, thinking about airline gates and sunscreen and the way secrets love vacations. There's a moment in every countdown when time flips from threat to tool. Mine was a Tuesday night, quiet as a church, when I set alarms on my phone for things she didn't know were important. Bank review, attorney check-in, document scans. She asked if I needed anything from Target for the week she'd be gone. I said, maybe coffee. She laughed, and I pictured waves. I wasn't waiting for waves. I was waiting for impact. In the middle of all that waiting, I made one promise to myself. I'd keep my dignity. That started small. 10 slow breaths every morning before my feet hit the floor. A jog around the block at dusk, past the same mailboxes, the same barking lab, the same kid practicing jump shots in his driveway. I let the rhythm steady me. Inhale, exhale, heel, toe, like counting reps in a gym you build inside your own chest. I stopped checking her location. I stopped rehearsing arguments I would never win. That night I slept in the guest room and told her it was because I was up early. No drama, no headlines, just space. Men my age know this move. It isn't punishment, it's protection. You can't drag your self-respect through a fire and expect it to come out clean. So I folded a spare blanket at the foot of the bed, turned off the lamp, and reminded myself, I answer to the man in the mirror first. Keeping my dignity meant keeping my paperwork clean. The next morning I sat across from Ms. Sterling, a straight shooter with warm eyes and a spine of steel. I laid out everything, bank statements, hotel charges, the calendar, the screenshots. She didn't flinch. You did the hard part, she said. You stayed calm. We walked through options like adults paying bills, temporary separation without drama, document every expense, no sudden moves that look petty. Then we reviewed what was mine before the wedding, my house, the retirement I'd been chipping into since my 20s, the old truck title I never let go. She explained it plain. Protect what's yours, don't weaponize what isn't. I took notes, not to remember, but to steady my breathing. When we finished, she slid the folder back to me and smiled the way coaches do when a player finally runs the play right. You're in control, she said. I left that office lighter, like I'd finally set something heavy down. The house woke up early, bright and efficient, like travel days always do. I carried her suitcase downstairs, the one with the missing zipper pull, and set it by the door. She floated through the kitchen, all soft edges and practiced warmth. You're sweet, she said, placing a hand on my arm like she still owned it. She talked about ocean air and spa robes, asked if I needed anything while she was gone, coffee maybe or socks. I checked the time. The Uber pinged, headlights washing across the living room wall. We walked out together. The neighborhood felt normal. Trash cans lined up, a jogger with a neon vest, a mailbox flag tilted just so. She hugged me. Her perfume was newer than her vows. I kissed her cheek and whispered, polite as Sunday, enjoy the island, with Kevin. She pulled back like a wire had snapped. The driver cleared his throat. She climbed in without a word. The door shut, and the street got very, very quiet. By noon I was at my desk, doing what men do, answering emails, moving numbers, pretending life was still a straight line. At 3:04 my phone buzzed with the kind of message people send when they think they're smarter than the truth. Don't worry, it's just an innocent girls' trip. I read it twice like I was checking a receipt. My reply wrote itself. Hope you and Kevin enjoy the island. No caps, no exclamation point, just a sentence that knew where it was going. I looked out the window at the parking lot where a gum wrapper did lazy circles in the wind. Then I set the phone face down and let silence do its job. Somewhere between baggage claim and palm trees, a fantasy collapsed. That's the thing about lies. They hold shape until a small, sharp word touches them. Then they fold. I took a sip of coffee that had gone cold and waited for the next sound my day was going to make. It didn't take long. The screen lit up like a slot machine. Call, message, call. 17 missed calls in under an hour, 43 texts stacking like bricks. The voicemails came with the same rhythm. Please call me. It's not what you think. We need to talk. And then the pivot every man recognizes. The sudden urgency that admits what the words refuse to say. A screenshot of a flight confirmation. Landing 11:47 p.m. Please don't leave. Please. I let the messages pile, the way snow piles on a fence. Quiet, inevitable. The office felt weirdly normal. A copier running, someone laughing down the hall, a meeting reminder popping up for next Tuesday. I answered none of it. Sometimes control is simply choosing not to engage. I packed up at 5, nodded to the night custodian, and walked to my car. The sky over Naperville was the color of steel. I started the engine and listened to the vibrations settle the way my pulse had learned to. Before I drove home, I stopped by Harper & Associates. Ms. Sterling spread my files like a map and asked for an update. I told her about the text, the calls, the flight. She studied my face the way doctors study x-rays. Good, she said. And it didn't sound cruel. Don't respond yet. We reviewed the plan one more time. No surprise withdrawals, no late-night arguments, no doorstep scenes that make neighbors part of the story. Silence, she said, isn't revenge. It's leverage. She adjusted a date on the timeline and circled a follow-up meeting. I realized I wasn't clenching my jaw anymore. She noticed. Panic makes people talk, she added. Let her talk. You stay steady. I nodded, tucked the folder under my arm, and stepped into the hallway. The building's lights hummed. Somewhere, a printer warmed up. Ordinary sounds, solid ground. I wasn't chasing a confession. I was protecting a future. And for the first time in weeks, the exit sign felt like direction, not escape. Walking out of the firm, I sat in my car and did the one thing I knew would change the shape of this story. I looked up Kevin's last name from the credit card receipt. Walsh. Lauren Walsh popped up in seconds. Family photos, 2 little kids in Halloween costumes, a porch swing with chipped white paint. And there it was, the post from yesterday. Proud of Kevin. Big conference in Florida this week. A smiling selfie, luggage by his feet. I felt the air thin, the way it does right before a storm. This wasn't just my kitchen anymore. It was her house, her kids' backpacks by the door, her world lined up in neat squares on a calendar she trusted. I scrolled a little more. PTA fundraiser, a birthday cake, a caption about early morning soccer. Ordinary life, steady and kind. The kind of life you don't get to wreck just because you're bored. The circle widened in my head. If truth hurts, it should hurt in both homes. I didn't want to blindside her, but I wasn't going to hide either. I dialed the office number listed on her dental clinic page. Lauren, my name isn't important, but I need to tell you something you can verify in 5 minutes. My voice was slow, the way you talk to someone holding glass. I gave her dates, hotel names, the Miami charge. I told her about my wife's text. Innocent girl's trip. I asked her to check the conference website, look at his credit card, ping his location. I wasn't asking her to trust me. I was asking her to check her own life. She typed while I spoke, keys clicking like a heartbeat that had picked up speed. Then the air shifted on the line. There's no conference, she whispered, as if the room might punish her for saying it. I didn't cheer. I didn't curse. I told her I was sorry. She didn't answer. The line went quiet, the kind of quiet that changes a house. I knew what would happen next. The scramble, the story, the version where I was cold and she was confused. So I called Beth, Laura's sister, the one who brings sweet potato casserole to Thanksgiving and keeps everyone laughing when the turkey's dry. Beth, it's Mike. I need to tell you something hard, and I'm telling you first because I respect you. I laid it out plain. Dates, receipts, the Miami text. I told her I wasn't yelling, I wasn't throwing things, I was documenting. She stopped me twice. No, she wouldn't. And then didn't stop me anymore. I don't know what to say, she breathed. You don't have to, I said. I just need you to hear it from me before you hear it from her. I sent screenshots, not to humiliate, but to anchor the truth to something she could hold. I asked her to keep the messages. She said she would. When we hung up, I stared at my call log. Family was no longer a single word. Home felt echoey when I walked in, like a church after the service, programs left on chairs, sunlight drifting across quiet. I poured a small glass of red, the good bottle I'd been saving, and set it on a coaster Laura bought at a craft fair. The wedding photo on the mantel caught me for a second. 2 people who believed time would always be on their side. Somewhere above the neighborhood, a plane stitched a thin white line across the sky. I thought about Lauren's porch swing, about Beth holding her phone and deciding what kind of sister she wanted to be. I held the glass and listened to my house breathe. HVAC, ice maker, a branch scratching the siding. This piece wasn't shared anymore. It wasn't ours. It was mine, and it felt both lighter and lonelier than I expected. I turned the frame face down, not out of anger, but to make room for air. Some truths you face standing up, with both hands still. Around 9, my phone buzzed with her name. Airplane noise hummed behind her voice. Mike, please, just listen. It's not what you think. I let her talk, words tumbling, reasons reaching for places that no longer existed. We can fix this. Just don't do anything until I get home. I kept my tone steady, the way Ms. Sterling taught me. We'll have one conversation tonight, I said. Then you'll pack what you need and find somewhere else to stay while the lawyers do their work. She swallowed, the line crackling. Lawyers? Already? I didn't raise my voice. I'm done being the only honest person in a dishonest story. She tried another door. Please don't tell anyone, don't tell his wife. A door that wouldn't open anymore. That part's handled, I said. Silence. Plain noise. A breath that sounded like a person realizing the ground is closer than they thought. I'm landing at 11:47. I'll be here, I said. Not to welcome her home, just to finish what started. Her last words hung in the air. I'm landing at 11:47, so I laid out the ground she was coming home to. I texted a simple summary, then sat at the kitchen table and rehearsed it out loud like I would before a big meeting. Accounts, temporarily frozen to prevent surprises. House, purchased before the wedding. Title in my name. Documentation. Organized, screenshots, statements, dates. I wasn't flexing. I was setting borders. When she called again, I spoke in plain English. We'll keep things civil, but we're done pretending. I've protected the essentials. She went quiet, the kind of quiet where you can hear a person sorting through outcomes. I didn't fill the silence with comfort. I let the facts carry their own weight, the way a beam carries a roof. Men my age know this tone. It's how you talk when a job's already started. I washed a plate, set it in the rack, and felt my shoulders drop an inch. Honesty is heavy, but it holds. The next call came fast, and it came small. Mike, please don't tell his wife. She said it like saving Kevin's marriage might save ours by proxy. I leaned against the counter and stared at the backyard, now black glass under the porch light. Lauren deserves the same information I do, I said. Truth isn't revenge, it's respect. She tried to frame it as kindness, as if secrecy were mercy and daylight were cruel. But mercy without truth is just a softer lie. I told her I already gave Lauren the tools to check. Dates, charges, the so-called conference. You can't, she whispered. I can, and I did, because families deserve to choose with both eyes open. I wasn't angry. I was steady. There's a difference. She exhaled a shaky breath, then the line went quiet again. Somewhere a jet cut across the sky toward O'Hare. Some nights, justice isn't a speech. It's a series of doors closing at the pace of reality. If you're going to have a hard conversation, build a room that won't lie to you. I wiped the kitchen table and put 2 glasses out, nothing fancy. Turned the dimmer down to a soft amber that doesn't flatter or accuse. In the living room, I set the old recliner facing the sofa, the same distance we keep for holiday photos. Equal, clear, no place to hide. I turned off the TV, silenced my phone, cracked a window to let cool air remind us to breathe. I laid a small stack of papers on the end table, timeline on top, hotel receipts beneath, the calendar printout last. Not to wave like a flag, just to keep the truth within reach. The house sounded ready, the hum of the fridge, the faint whistle through the vent, the street's low hush. I wasn't staging a fight. I was staging honesty. The porch light cast a clean circle on the welcome mat. For once, the word felt literal. Headlights slid across the blinds and the deadbolt turned. She stepped in like a traveler who lost the map, hair flat, makeup smudged, shoulders carrying more than luggage. The suitcase thumped by the door. Her eyes were red in a way that had nothing to do with airports. We need to talk, she said, reaching for the familiar rhythm. I shook my head once. No, you need to listen. The words surprised me with how quietly they landed. I gestured to the sofa and sat across from her, palms on my knees, heels planted like I was checking my stance. She started with the script, confusion, misunderstanding, the word mistake doing too much work. I didn't interrupt. When the room emptied of excuses, she looked at the papers. What is all this? Truth, I said. Not a speech, not a spectacle, just a man who finally learned that boundaries are a kind of love you aim at yourself when you've run out of others. I thought that was the end, that the house would finally go quiet. But silence has a way of talking when you stop filling it. 3 nights later, while sorting old emails for the lawyer, I found something small. An invoice from 2 years ago, same hotel chain, same handwriting. Kevin wasn't the start. He was the pattern. I sat there staring at dates that didn't match memories, and realized this story wasn't about one lie. It was about how long I'd agreed to believe them. I slid the first page forward, the studio schedule, tapped the dates she'd claimed to cover classes that already had subs posted online. Next came the book club nights that lined up with ride shares nowhere near the library, and hotel charges that somehow always coincided with late meetings. I didn't raise my voice. The pages did the talking. She blinked hard, grabbed at pieces that wouldn't stitch. A coworker needed help. A friend had a crisis, a mischarge on the card. I flipped to Miami, pointed to the pre-authorization, then to her text on the same day. The house didn't move. Neither did I. I've seen numbers lie when people want them to, but these didn't. They sat there like weather, indifferent and true. "How long have you known?" she asked, voice small. "Long enough to stop guessing," I said. And in the silence that followed, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not victory, not even relief. Just the clean edge of a fact finally standing. She tried the soft words first, the ones people use when they want a reset button. "It was a mistake. I never meant to hurt you. I was scared to tell the truth." I sat still and let each sentence pass like a slow car at a four-way stop. A mistake is missing a turn, not booking hotels under a different story, not months of book club and overtime and passwords I didn't recognize. Fear explained shaking hands, not planned weekends and secret rides across town. I wasn't there to win a debate. I was there to mark the line between accident and intent. "Listen," I said, calm as I could manage. "This isn't a spill you clean with a towel. This is a pattern." She blinked, searching for a version of us that would let this slide. I looked at the timeline between us and told the truest thing I had. This wasn't an accident. It was a chain of choices. Once the words were said, the rest needed to be simple. "You'll stay somewhere else for a while," I told her. "We'll keep the house quiet. The lawyers will handle the movement. We're not going to wrestle this in the living room." She called it cold. I called it boundaries. I laid out the basics like you do when a storm's coming. What's secured, what we're not touching, who's responsible for what this week. She reached for the old tone, the one that used to get us through smaller fights. "We can talk this out." I shook my head. "This isn't therapy. This is consequence. Not to punish, just to stop pretending." I gave her space to pack a bag and offered to call a rideshare. When she hesitated, I pointed to the folder again. The facts had already spoken. We were just catching up to them. She nodded once, slow, as if permission lived in that small motion. The room exhaled, and we kept moving. My phone lit up with a Miami area code. "Is this Michael?" The voice was tight, already angry. "This is Kevin." He didn't ask how I got his wife's number. He asked why. "You're blowing up my life," he said. "She's talking about taking the kids." I leaned against the counter and stared at the backyard where the porch light cut clean lines on the grass. "I didn't blow up anything," I said. "You and my wife did that months ago. I handed the truth to the person who needed it." He shifted to blame, the way cornered men do, claims about love, about confusion, about timing. "You don't understand," he kept saying, as if complexity could erase simple facts. "I understand this," I answered. "Choices have owners. I'm taking ownership of mine. You can take ownership of yours." The line went quiet long enough to hear his breath. "You'll regret this," he tried. "No," I said. "I regret giving you both the benefit of the doubt." By morning, the house moved like a checklist. She folded clothes into 2 small bags, eyes low, steps careful. I kept to the kitchen. Coffee, email, the plain rhythm of a Wednesday. I changed a few passwords, updated emergency contacts at work, and put our insurance cards in separate envelopes. No slamming doors, no speeches, just practical work you do when the road turns and you refuse to skid. Curtis called at 9:10. I gave him the update. Flight, meeting, the new address she'd texted for mail. He listened, then said, "Clean and complete." I liked the way those words sat. Clean meant no pettiness, no scorekeeping. Complete meant no gaps for chaos to sneak through. She set her house key on the counter without looking at me. I thanked her for that small piece of clarity. When the door closed behind her, the silence wasn't victory. It was a floor that finally held. I rinsed my mug and let the hot water run longer than usual. Before noon, Beth called. Not a text, a call, the way families do when the room gets serious. "Mike, I heard." Her voice had that stunned cotton in it. I walked her through the same steady road. Dates, receipts, the Miami text. She asked questions she already knew the answers to, the kind we ask when our heart is trying to bargain. "Was there any sign?" she said finally. I could hear a chair scrape on her end, like she had to sit down. "Little ones," I admitted. "I just didn't want them to add up." She was quiet, then told me pieces I didn't know. Odd excuses, canceled plans, the way Laura guarded her phone at family dinners. We weren't building a pile, we were aligning a picture. "I need time," she whispered. "Take it," I said. I wasn't recruiting, I was reporting. After we hung up, I could feel the circle widen. Sister, friends, neighbors. Truth doesn't shout, it echoes. And every echo makes the story simpler. After Beth hung up, the next ripple hit closer to the curb. Mrs. Carson was out front watering her hydrangeas, the hose looping like a lazy snake. She waved the way neighbors do, 2 fingers, small smile, then looked past me toward our driveway. "Quiet over there lately," she said, voice light, eyes not quite landing. She mentioned seeing late-night bags a few times, different cars, different nights, then stepped back as if she'd said too much. I felt the air around us shift, like a balloon finally brushing against a nail. I'd been in a bubble, work, routine, trust, while the block kept its quiet scoreboard. She asked if I needed anything from the store. I said I was fine. We both pretended not to hear the rest of the sentence hanging between us. When I went back inside, the house felt smaller and clearer at the same time. Truth had left my living room and pulled into every driveway. I wasn't the only witness anymore. By early afternoon, my phone buzzed with a number I'd saved without a label. "Thank you," the text read, "for giving me facts I could verify." She followed with a simple plan that sounded like a person sitting up straight. She'd met with a lawyer, she'd filed, and she was moving to Colorado to be near her parents. No drama, no paragraphs, just the kind of sentences you write when you're tired of lies and ready to breathe. She typed one more line that I read twice. "You saved us years." I stood at the sink with the water running and let that land. I hadn't rescued anyone. I'd handed the truth to its rightful owner. Still, I could picture her packing kids' backpacks, canceling a cable bill, forwarding mail, the small practical moves that rebuild a life. I wrote back, "I'm sorry you had to learn this way." She replied, "I'm glad I learned." Some days, grace looks like clean paperwork and a new zip code. 2 days after Lorna's message, something strange showed up in my inbox, a PDF from a sender I didn't recognize, subject line, "For your records." Inside was a police report draft, my name typed under suspect, time-stamped last night. It accused me of domestic threats. The address matched my house. The signature didn't match any officer I knew. I printed it, laid it flat on the table, and stared at the typo in my middle name. Laura always misspelled it that way. My pulse didn't spike, it steadied. I took photos, emailed Curtis with the line, "Possible fabrication, need verification." 10 minutes later he called. "Good catch, this was never filed." Silence held for a second. Then he said, "They're trying to build a story before discovery." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Truth doesn't panic when it's documented. It just waits for the lie to overplay its hand. And this one just did. While Curtis verified the fake report, another crack appeared, this time from Miami. The next crack came from Miami. A mutual friend texted a screenshot of an email chain, expense reports flagged, conference charges that didn't match any event, hotel bills coded as client meetings. Companies don't care about gossip, they care about numbers, and his didn't add up. An hour later, my phone rang with the 305 again. He went straight to the point, "They're suspending me," then drifted into the old chorus. I'd ruined his career, his family, his chances. I let him talk until the words wore themselves out. "Kevin," I said, steady as a level, "this isn't personal, it's arithmetic." He asked me to call Lauren and soften it. I told him she was already doing the hardest math, subtracting a husband, adding courage. He swore, went quiet, and hung up. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt the world doing what it does when pressure meets weakness. Dominoes don't fall because they're evil. They fall because they're lined up and someone finally stops holding them. That night, I sat in the old recliner with the window cracked 2 inches. The autumn wind slipped in and clicked the blinds like a metronome. I poured a small glass of red and let it breathe while I did the same. The living room was the same room, same rug, same lamp, same dent in the cushion, but the temperature had shifted inside me. Not warm yet, not cold, just level. I thought about football on Sundays, overcooked steaks, my dad falling asleep in a chair exactly like this one. I thought about Lauren's message, Beth's silence, Mrs. Carson's careful eyes. Somewhere down the block, a garage door groaned shut. I swirled the wine and watched it hold a circle before it let go. That's what it felt like, holding shape, then easing into something honest. The house wasn't safer because she was gone. It was safer because I'd stopped lying to myself. Peace didn't arrive like a rescue, it arrived like a decision. The next morning my assistant buzzed. "She's here," she said softly, the kind tone people use when rooms might break. Laura stepped in wearing yesterday's cardigan, hair pulled back like a truce flag, eyes ringed with the kind of night no sleep can fix. She shut the door, then started fast. Apologies, explanations, a word soup of fear and memory. I let her talk until the sentences circled. Then I did what I promised myself I'd do. I kept it simple. "All communication goes through the lawyers," I said. "Not because I want to punish you, because I want this to stay clean." She called it cold again. I called it necessary. I explained the steps, mailing address, temporary arrangements, contact windows for logistics only. She asked if we could meet for coffee, just once, no attorneys. I shook my head. Principle isn't romantic, but it's sturdy. I walked her to the lobby, thanked her for coming by, and held the door. Boundaries, I've learned, still count as kindness. On her way out of the lobby, she tried one more angle, the kind people use when the floor is giving way. 23 years has to count for something, she said. It was only physical. We can fix this. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever it takes. I've heard vows, and I've heard deals. This was a deal. She stacked promises like sandbags against a river that had already jumped the bank. I kept my hands in my pockets so I wouldn't soften. "Therapy's a good thing," I said. "You should do it. But not for us. Do it for whoever you are next." She blinked like the word next had sharp corners. "You can't throw this away," she pushed. I didn't raise my voice. "I'm not throwing anything. I'm putting down what's been dropped on me." She took a step closer, searching for the man I used to be. "Please." I shook my head. "What you're offering now belongs to the life after this one." 2 days later, Curtis forwarded a PDF. Her attorney had filed a counterclaim, emotional abandonment. I actually laughed, the short kind you let out when a thing is both predictable and sad. I called Curtis and read him timestamps like a sportscaster calling plays, book club nights against hotel charges, Uber pickups against studio schedules, the Miami pre-authorization against innocent girls trip. He didn't need convincing, but I needed to hear the facts line up out loud. "This is solid," he said. "Keep the tone you have right now." I sent over the call logs, the texts I hadn't answered, the calendar we printed for the living room showdown. He filed a response the same afternoon. Clean, simple, not mean. I thought about how often we men try to fix things with volume. This time, the paperwork did the talking, and for the first time since the kitchen buzzed with that text, I felt the argument leave my body. The record, finally, was the record. That night, my phone buzzed with a screenshot, Laura's text to a friend, time-stamped weeks earlier. The caption, "He's losing it. Might go off the rails soon." She'd sent it to Kevin, and somehow it found its way to Curtis's inbox. Anonymous forward, no note. It looked like a setup, a breadcrumb for unstable husband, the kind that lawyers love to twist into leverage. For 1 second, I felt the old heat climb my neck. Then I did what silence-trained men do. I documented, dated, archived. No reply, no panic, just data. Curtis called the next morning. "Good catch," he said. "They're trying to frame a narrative. You just framed the evidence." I smiled, not out of victory, but recognition. Lies repeat themselves when they're running out of room. I wasn't fighting her anymore. I was letting the story collapse under its own handwriting. When pressure doesn't work, some people reach for knives made of rumor. She called from a number I didn't recognize and tried a new door. "If you knew everything, would it matter?" Kevin wasn't the first. The words were meant to sting, to bait me into bargaining with a worse truth. I let the silence stand between us until it got heavy. So now honesty is a hostage? I asked. She pivoted, threats dressed as wisdom. You'll regret making this so final. I pictured the old recliner, the steady clock, the house that had started to feel honest again. I regret enough, I said. Not this. The thing about a final twist is it tells you who the person is when the mask slides. She wasn't reaching for repair anymore. She was reaching for leverage. And it's strange. When you finally see that clearly, the anger leaks out. You stop arguing with the performance and start closing the curtain. I called Ms. Sterling and reported the latest, the counterclaim, the twist, the threat. She listened like a nurse checks a pulse, calm, efficient, not easily impressed by drama. Legally, nothing changes, she said. We keep our course. No reactive texts, no late-night explanations. Stay boring. The advice felt like a clean table you can finally set your hands on. We reviewed dates, next filings, and a few what-ifs I'd been carrying around like spare weight. The goal isn't to win a scene, she reminded me. It's to finish a process. After we hung up, I realized my jaw wasn't tight. The room felt bigger, like someone had opened a window I hadn't noticed. I stood there for a minute, not triumphant, just done with the heat. There's a quiet that doesn't come from exhaustion. It comes from alignment. I poured water, stared out at the maple, and understood I wasn't waiting for her to change anymore. I was waiting for my life to catch up. With the noise turned down, I dialed an old number. "Marcus," I said, "you still running those Saturday poker nights?" He laughed, big, warm, familiar. "Only if you're ready to lose." We picked a time. He asked the right amount of questions and didn't ask the rest. Men in our 40s don't always say, "I miss you," but we feel it when the chair at the table is empty. After we hung up, I looked around the house and saw what I'd let shrink. Friends I'd canceled on, hobbies I'd shelved, parts of me that learned to walk quietly so the floor wouldn't creak. I pulled an old box from the closet, fly fishing reels, a softball glove, a photo of the lake we used to camp near. I wiped dust off the glove and slipped it on. It fit like it remembered me. I wasn't trying to rebuild yesterday. I was checking the edges of who I'd always been and feeling them come back into focus. After I hung up with Marcus, I opened the closet and started telling the truth with my hands. I pulled boxes down, set 3 piles on the floor: keep, donate, trash. The sweater she always said made me look old went in the donate stack. The shirt I never liked but wore for peace went in the trash. I cleaned the nightstand, old receipts, a dead pen, a note that once meant something. The dresser drawers slid easier when half the weight was gone. I stripped the bed and changed the sheets, not because fresh cotton fixes a life, but because some rooms need a new first page. The laundry hummed like a small engine rebuilding a road. I wiped the bathroom mirror and looked at a man who was no longer auditioning for his own home. People talk about closure like it's a speech. Sometimes it's a trash bag, a vacuum line, a fitted sheet snapping tight. The house didn't sparkle, it steadied. The next day started with a cheap spiral notebook on the counter. Page 1. Mornings, gym. I drove to the small place off Ogden, did 20 minutes on a bike, and stretched until my shoulders remembered their job. Page 2. Evenings, cook. I seared a chicken breast, burned the first one, ate the second, and laughed at myself like a guy relearning a bike. Page 3. Walk, lake path. After dinner, I took the loop by the water, passed a dad teaching his kid to cast, waved at a woman walking a golden retriever who refused to hurry. None of it was heroic. It was ordinary on purpose, a routine that didn't need permission. I slept better that night, not long, but clean. No 2 a.m. phone checks, no mental arguments with ghosts. The notebook wasn't a plan to impress anyone. It was a promise I could keep. I woke up with sore legs and a quiet head, the kind of quiet that feels earned. At the office, I kept my head down and my tone even. People glanced the way coworkers do when rumors circle the break room, then went back to their screens. I met with my team, assigned the week's work, and caught a small mistake on a freight invoice that would have cost us a client. My boss stepped in after lunch, shut the door, and said what good bosses say. "Take the time you need. We've got you." I thanked him and meant it. Then I turned back to the spreadsheet and let the columns do what columns do, line up. There was something healing about numbers that either add or don't. No drama, no maybe, no almost. I ate at my desk, leftover chicken, and answered emails without checking my phone for anything else. By 3, I realized my body had matched the chair. Back flat, shoulders down, pulse steady. Work didn't fix me. It reminded me I still knew how to hold a line and finish the page. I texted Lauren to meet for coffee. Public place, daylight, 10 minutes. She arrived with tired eyes and a spine that wouldn't bend. We kept it simple. Kids, logistics, next steps. She told me her parents were expecting them in Colorado, that the school transfer forms were already in motion. I told her the lawyer I trusted, the questions I asked, the ones I wish I'd asked sooner. We didn't trade pain like souvenirs. We compared maps so we wouldn't get lost again. When she said thank you, it wasn't dramatic. It was the way people say it after a good nurse removes a splinter. We agreed not to make a habit of meeting. We didn't want the story to invent a new chapter. On the sidewalk, she said, "I hope you find something steady." I nodded and said, "You too." 2 people, 2 paper cups, no rescue, no revenge. Just honesty and the small relief that comes when strangers stop being blind. By the weekend, Beth's tone had cooled into something careful. She answered my texts, but slowly, like each word had to pass inspection. I didn't press. I knew she was choosing between blood and truth, and that's not a choice anyone makes cleanly. Friends told me Laura was restless at Beth's place, pacing, short-tempered, trying to manage a narrative that kept slipping out of her hands. Family group chats grew quiet, then split into side threads. Holidays, birthdays, who sits where, those questions started floating without chairs to land on. That's the thing about a lie. It doesn't just crack one wall. It runs along the studs until the whole frame creaks. I stopped checking who liked what on social. I watered the fern she forgot to take. I folded a blanket and put it at the end of the couch for no one in particular. Belonging used to mean us. For now it meant me, here, honest. It felt smaller. It also felt real. From the outside, it looked like the story was finally cooling. Then Lauren texted, "Found more messages. Different woman, same script. Late nights, work dinners, a photo taken in a bar bathroom that forgot to hide the logo." She didn't write paragraphs, just sent screenshots in 3 words. "I'm done, Michael." Her attorney moved to separate assets while her parents measured bedroom sizes in Colorado for 2 growing kids. We talked once more. Brief, calm, practical. She wasn't fighting for a man who couldn't choose. She was fighting for a stable home. I recognized the posture. Some men learn the wrong lesson from getting caught. They learn to hide better, not to live better. Kevin's name kept popping up on my phone like a spam call I didn't answer. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt confirmed. Character, like gravity, keeps working unless something stronger acts on it. Lauren chose to be the stronger force. Watching her steady up reminded me I could too. Word spreads in suburbs the way ivy grows, quietly, then everywhere. The yoga studio's smiles started to curl at the edges. Clients whispered. A couple of instructors quit. The owner posted a temporary closure notice with a vague caption about restructuring. I drove by on my way to the grocery store and saw the blinds half drawn, a stack of mail rubber-banded in the doorframe. Places built on calm can't survive long on chaos. They swallow their own marketing. Laura lost more than a paycheck. She lost the room that had co-signed her story. Without the music and the dim lights, without the ritual of mats and breath, there was just a person standing under fluorescent truth. I didn't celebrate. I bought eggs, a loaf of bread, and drove home. You think consequences will feel loud, but they mostly feel like a sign on a window that's been there all week, fluttering a little, waiting for someone to admit it isn't coming down. The nods changed. That's how you know. The same neighbors walked the same dogs, but their eyes held a new math, knowledge instead of rumor. Mr. Patel waved slower. The teenage kid down the street stopped tossing his basketball when Laura drove by to pick up mail. At the next HOA meeting, small talk came with commas that didn't lead anywhere. No one said her name, but conversation took the long way around any subject shaped like marriage. It wasn't cruelty, it was distance, the kind you put between yourself and a thing you don't want to catch. I raked the front yard and took my time, felt the rhythm of the tines against the grass. Mrs. Carson brought over extra tomatoes and asked how I was doing the way people ask when they already know the outline. Better, I said, and meant it. Communities don't deliver verdicts with gavels. They deliver them with quieter porches and shorter waves. It stings. It also clarifies. I deleted the apps and moved the icons I kept to the second screen. News could wait. Comments could go find someone else. I pulled a paperback from the shelf, one I'd meant to read for years, and let chapter 1 have me after dinner. The next morning I laced up at dawn and jogged the lake path before the fishermen finished their coffee. Geese cut the water in long V's. The air smelled like cut grass and cold metal. My phone stayed in the console, face down, free from the duty of rescuing me from my own thoughts. Peace didn't sneak up on me. I invited it. I built it like a porch swing, board by board, chain by chain. There's a difference between silence that punishes and silence that heals. This was the second kind. It didn't ask me to forget. It asked me to decide. I got home, showered, scrambled eggs, and packed a lunch like a man who knew where his noon was. By midweek, the envelopes from both firms started to land. Draft terms, red lines, a clean list of who keeps what. Savings split down the middle. The house and the retirement I'd started in my 20s stayed where they'd lived all along. No fireworks, no victory laps, just arithmetic that finally respected the facts. Curtis called to walk it through, hash out a couple of dates, and confirm there were no surprises lurking in the margins. I read every line, not because I didn't trust him, but because I needed to tell my nervous system this was real. We scheduled signatures, agreed on a near-term move-out plan for the last of her things, and paused at the end of the call like two carpenters admiring a straight beam. "This is fair," he said. "And finished," I added. When I set the papers down, the house made its usual noises, the fridge hum, the distant train. Normal returned in small sounds. Balance, it turns out, is quiet. After the papers were set, the weather caught up to me. A steady rain tapped the eaves, soft and even, the kind you feel more than hear. I set the wedding photo on the coffee table and really looked at it for the first time in months. Two people on a courthouse step, July light bouncing off a rented suit, her bouquet already starting to droop. I remembered the drive home that day, the way we believed traffic lights would always turn green for us if we waited long enough. The rain made a shallow drum of the roof, and something in me loosened that I'd been holding out of habit. Forever is a beautiful word. It's also a promise that needs both hands. I turned the frame over, slid the picture back into its sleeve, and put it in a drawer with tax returns and winter gloves. Not erased, stored. The grief was smaller than I feared and kinder than I expected, like an ache that finally names itself. A day later, I slid into a booth across from Marcus and the old crew. The place hadn't changed. Neon beer signs, a chalkboard special, a waitress who calls everyone hun. We ordered burgers we'd pretend to regret and told stories we didn't have to edit. No one asked for the director's cut of my mess. They asked if I wanted jalapenos. Someone botched a joke and made it funnier. I laughed from the middle of my chest, not the top of my throat. It felt like my face remembered a password. When the check came, Marcus put a hand on my shoulder the way brothers do when they don't need words. "Saturday poker?" he grinned. "Deal," I said. Walking to the parking lot, I realized I hadn't measured my sentences or watched the table like a weather report. I'd just been there. No eggshells, no quick glances at a phone I was tired of hiding behind. Belonging isn't dramatic. It's simply being welcomed as you are. On the drive home, my phone buzzed with her name. "We could start over," the message said. "Therapy, fresh slate, I miss us." I parked in the driveway and let the screen light the cabin for a long beat. Once, that would have pulled me into a late-night loop. Hope, bargaining, drafting speeches in the Notes app. Tonight I read it twice, felt the old gravity tug, and chose the new math. You don't rebuild a house on a cracked foundation because the paint still looks good. You pour a new slab. I typed nothing. No fight, no summary of lessons learned, no last sermon. I put the phone down, walked inside, and set my keys in the bowl that had been catching my days for years. Then I did the smallest, hardest thing. I deleted the message and emptied the trash folder. The quiet afterward wasn't empty. It was a clear lane on an open road, the kind a man knows by the sound of his own engine. The next evening, a soft knock threaded through the hallway. I opened the blinds an inch and saw her on the porch, hair damp from mist, hands wrapped in sleeves against a breeze that wasn't that cold. I didn't open the door. Through the glass, words rushed, blame in one breath, apology in the next, a promise braided with another promise. 23 years is a lot of rope. It can pull you or bind you. I leaned my forehead against the wood and listened to sentences that had done their best work already. I wasn't angry. I was finished. "Please," she said. The porch light threw a circle around her shoes, and I thought of all the circles we'd walked. Same argument, different month, gentler ending that didn't stick. "All communication goes through the lawyers," I said, slow and even, then stepped back. After a long minute, footsteps retreated. The lock clicked and held. Boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're rails to keep you on the road you chose. That weekend, I did something plain on purpose. I lit a candle at the table and put Coltrane on low, the kind of sax that smooths a room without asking for attention. I poured a glass of red, nothing fancy, and cooked pasta with garlic until the house smelled like a place that forgives. The chair felt good. The fork felt honest. I ate slowly and didn't narrate it to anyone in my head. After dishes, I stood at the sink with warm water and let my shoulders drop as if the day were a jacket. Peace showed up in small touches. The soft click of the thermostat, the candle wick making tiny sparks, the record's faint hiss between tracks. I didn't earn this by being perfect. I earned it by not lying to myself. I blew out the candle, watched the smoke curl, and took one long breath that felt like it reached all the way to the soles of my feet. Simple can be sturdy. Tonight, it was. After the quiet night and the last of the dishes, the next morning brought the final errand. I parked outside the courthouse and sat for a minute, hands on the wheel, listening to the engine tick as it cooled. Inside, the clerk slid a thin stack across the counter. Plain paper. Big ending. I read every line the way you read instructions for something you don't want to assemble but must. Then I signed. Full name, steady hand, twice. A second signature at a window down the hall, a stamp with a sound like a door clicking shut, and then the walk to file. The man behind the glass took the packet and said the one word I didn't know I needed. Filed. No confetti, no soundtrack, just the soft scrape of a folder being pushed into the right place. I stepped back into daylight that looked like any other day and felt the ground answer under my shoes. Whatever we'd been, this was what we were now. Finished. That afternoon, my phone lit up with Ms. Sterling's name. "We're final," she said, voice warm as coffee. "Terms are exactly what we pushed for, clear, fair, and enforceable." She walked me through the last page like a pilot talking a plane onto the runway. Assets, accounts, house and retirement intact, the rest divided as agreed. Clean, decisive. I didn't realize I was smiling until I heard it in my own breath. We scheduled one more signature, more ceremony than necessity. "You did this right," she added, not as flattery, but as inventory. I thanked her for standing between me and the parts of myself that wanted to get loud. After we hung up, I stood at the window and watched a neighbor teach his daughter how to ride without training wheels, hands hovering near the seat, ready, then letting go. She wobbled, steadied, and pedaled on her own. I laughed, quiet, surprised. Some victories don't rush. They just arrive and ask for your nod. The next morning began like a life I recognized. I brewed coffee and checked email without checking shadows. The yard needed water, so I pulled the hose across the lawn and let the sprinkler clap its circle, catching sunlight in brief rainbows. I answered 2 work notes, tossed a load of laundry in, and booked a Saturday hike with Marcus, trailhead at 8, breakfast after. I threw a granola bar and a map into a day pack like muscle memory had been waiting under the dust. No speeches, no postmortems, just small decisions done in order. At lunch, I sat on the back steps and listened to the neighborhood do what neighborhoods do. Leaf blowers, a dog announcing the mailman, bike tires whispering on concrete. The phone stayed quiet on purpose. I didn't need it to tell me who I was. When I went back inside, the house met me like an old friend. Same walls, different weather. I took a deep breath, and for once, it felt exactly enough. Here's what I learned when the papers dried and the house got quiet. Safety isn't a house. It's the truth you stand in. Four walls can hold pictures, but only honesty holds a life. Love doesn't guarantee honesty, choices do. Every day we decide who we are to the people who trust us. And self-respect isn't a slogan, it's the start of freedom. You earn it by drawing a line, then keeping it when it shakes. I didn't burn anything down. I stopped feeding a lie. I chose a future I can look in the eye. Some days that looks like coffee on the back steps. Some days it looks like a long drive with the radio low and a road that doesn't need directions. And if you want a line you can use when the world asks why you didn't swing back, take mine. Sometimes the best revenge is letting people live with the consequences they chose. If you've ever chosen calm over chaos, drop "I chose peace" below, then subscribe and stick with me for the next story.